Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Stephen Pinecker, and my homeboy, my homie, my good friend, David Boice of 52 Churches in 52 Weeks, author of the book and the YouTube channel. David Boice, welcome back to the program.
Steve, it's always great to be back. So, doing everything I can, learning as much as possible. Thanks for another invitation to talk about a Protestant from the Midwest exploring Utah,
Yeah.
uh, really for the first time. So,
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about your experiences because David, of course, many of you saw when he did the general conference video earlier this year, but he didn't really get to explore Utah that much. And so he's since made 2 trips, and they actually have an upcoming trip later this month. And we're going to miss each other by a couple days because I'm heading out there. When you guys watch this episode, it's most likely going to be on Friday, December 8th is when I'm releasing this. I'll be in Utah. And hopefully you will have seen me at the December 7th meetup at Crown Burgers in downtown Salt Lake City near Temple Square. So either I'm going to post this Thursday or Friday. I don't know. Either way, not sure. Everything's just like, everything with the planning and everything like that. It's pretty wild. And these trips are well worth it because every time I get out to Utah, it really is a wonderful thing. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about, you've done a few videos. You've actually did an episode where you went to the temple tour in Bentonville, Arkansas, which I think, right, that's corporate headquarters for Walmart as well. And maybe you just talk about your first experience going through a temple. And then this is cool because David has then done other temple tours that we're going to talk about. And he's got an upcoming episode about the Orem Temple, which we're going to do a special preview. Folks, just so you know, this is a dual episode that's going to be on both Mormon Book Reviews and my new YouTube channel, the Utah Utah Interfaith Forum. Here it is on the screen share. Right now we have 155 subscribers. Just getting this thing started. I don't have expectations this is going to be like a huge channel, but I think it's going to be an important channel where we can have different conversations. And so I want you all to check out this, and we're actually going to have bonus 10-minute bonus coverage exclusive to the Utah Interfaith Forum. That after we're done taping this, David and I are going to do a special little segment that's only on UIF. So make sure you're liked and subscribed and have your notification buttons turned on. All right, here we go. So David, how's it been taking these trips to Utah and then exploring, like I said, the Bentonville? Maybe talk about visiting your first temple experience and then just talking about your trips in Utah as well. I mean, it's fabulous. It's just wonderful, the stuff you're doing.
yeah. So, yeah, it's been a long journey to even get to this point. But I know with doing the 52 churches in 52 weeks, by far the most popular visit was week 47 when I drove out to Salt Lake City as a Protestant to attend General Conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, I've kind of mentioned, it's like it was very eye-opening just to see the stark contrast of everything that was going on inside the conference center versus what was going on outside the conference center. But because everything was so fast, it was like a blur. So I needed to, I didn't get much of a chance to really explore Utah. Like my local missionaries were telling me all about the things I needed to visit in Utah, like Swig, like I needed a dirty soda, needed to try some of the cookies like Crumble and Crave, Crown Burger, like you're going to be having with the future meetup. I haven't with I think you mentioned that you like the pastrami with Crown Burger.
Mm-hmm.
I think I tried a little bit of it. It's a little bit different for me because I don't eat much pastrami, but
I'll tell you what, I don't know that pastrami. That's the real deal in my book, man. I'll tell you. Well, what's your
yeah.
favorite burger at Crown Burgers? What do you like to get?
I don't even remember what I purchased. I try to be like, for me, like when I eat, I try to be very simple. I don't go too crazy with it. But yeah, it's just the different types of with the dirty soda, with all these gourmet
Okay, so
cookies.
what is a dirty soda?
Okay, so what I've learned is they typically like it's like typical soda, but then they're adding in other type of ingredients and creamer in it,
Okay.
so it just tastes so much better.
Huh.
So Steve, next time you're out there, you're going to need to try
Dirty
a
soda.
swig as well. Yeah.
Okay, now see, now back in the Midwest, we had what was called suicides. Remember, you ever have a suicide where you
No.
But well, so I think it might be even a Chicago thing. The suicide is where you go to the fountain drink thing and you take put a little bit of each pop in your thing. So you just have all a mix of like 5 or 6 different pops, and we call those suicides. So I was thinking maybe it was kind of a similar thing, but they had other ingredients to it. Sounds very fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So add that
interesting.
to the list, Steve.
Okay, I'm adding it to the list right now. Okay, suicides. All right. Okay, so you
Yeah.
experienced the culture. This is the key thing now. And of course, you had fry. Did you have fry sauce with your fries?
Oh, yes, of course. Fry sauce as well. So um it's so different. Like it's like, why isn't fry sauce in other regions? It's such a regional Utah-based thing. I don't understand why it's not in more places.
Yeah, it's just its own little world that's really cool.
Right.
And so yeah, and that's the cool thing. So you got to experience the culture of Utah, driving around. As a matter of fact, one of your trips, you were supposed to get to the St. George Temple, but what happened? You were going with Rick Bennett of Gospel Tangents, and something happened. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I was so curious the last time I was out in Utah to go to St. George, this pioneer era temple. And I've had a lot of requests from viewers to go out there. So for me, like I drive, you know, crazy distances. So 4 hours, 2 hours back, it didn't sound like it'd be too bad. But Interstate 15 in Utah is something different. It's so Rick from Gospel Tangents, we were driving out there and he was going to be my tour guide. And we passed through Beaver, and then I think it's called Cedar City. Anyway, we got there and we got stuck in a traffic jam on a Monday morning because apparently, like, we were seeing helicopters flying above us and we were just stuck, and kind of figured, all right, this will probably be over in a few, 20 minutes tops. But it got to an hour and we were still stuck in traffic. And from what later we understood is there was a high speed police pursuit of a suspect. And apparently they shut down all the interstate, they shut down the roads so they could deal with this one individual, to the point where they actually I guess they had to smoke bomb him out. So it got to be so late in the day, we had to turn around because if we had gotten to St. George, we would turn right back and I was going to miss my flight.
Right, right.
So unfortunately, there was still a big part of me that wanted to visit again. So I was able to visit the St. George open house for the very last day, just so I can kind of see like this historic, 19th century type of temple that was built, with Brigham Young having a huge hand in.
Oh, that's fascinating. And of course, you had said something, there were like tens of thousands of people there for the final day, and you got a personal tour.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I mean, that's a real privileged place to be, to be able to have access to that kind of thing. How did that make you feel?
It was such a blessing, so humbling. It's like I don't deserve that. One of the weird, strange things with doing, the YouTube with the 52 churches in 52 weeks. I do some of the churches, or some of the church videos with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's humbling to see the response to the videos, and just the humility from church members. And I try to live by the golden rule: treat others the way that you want to be treated. And to have that reciprocated to me has been such a blessing. So when I did the Bentonville, Arkansas temple visit, I just walked in. I'm not special. Just get the tour and go from there. And the response on YouTube, with the views, the comments, the likes, that was not something that I expected. And so to see that translate to a tour like with Orem and St. George, I can't say enough good things. It's just, can't believe it.
Yeah, and so was the Bentonville, Arkansas, we're going to get back to Utah and its culture, but was the Bentonville, Arkansas temple, was that the first temple you went through? Was that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
And so just maybe just talk about, and of course you have your video where you did talk about it, but maybe just talk about your experience going into a sacred space for Latter-day Saints.
Yeah. In the video I mentioned, it's like I felt like I was like walking into the Twilight Zone. As a Protestant, I'm not a recommended member or anything like that. To walk in for the first time was very different. But in the video, I kind of mentioned where it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm walking out of the Twilight Zone, just due to the church and their emphasis on so many good things that is done through the church, especially with the focus on families, especially when it comes to building a relationship with Christ. One thing that I didn't, but with my viewers, one of the recommendations I had was, well, we really wish you had a personal tour, because there's a lot of rooms that I just kind of walked through and didn't really understand or grasp the context of everything inside. So that's where some of these personal tours with the Orem Temple and then the St. George Temple really help me to give context to me, but also to find new appreciation. So I hope in these future temple visits, with these videos, it's going to provide that a little bit more, just as I gain more of an understanding of it all.
Yeah, and just to be clear, folks, just for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, because a lot of people are like, well, how is David able to get into temples? Because obviously they're closed to the public and only people with temple recommends are able to come in. Well, what they do is when they build a new temple or they do a remodeling of a temple, like they did the Washington, D.C. temple last year, is they actually open these places, these sacred spaces to the public and take them through that. So just to be clear, that this is not, you weren't granted special privileges. It was one of those things where, it's open to the public for a period of time, and the church opens up their doors to the community to let them walk in and explain to them, these, kind of give them a general idea of what goes on in the temples and stuff like that. And of course, folks, on February 7th of this year, the temple, they did announce a lot of different changes to the temple ceremony. I remember flying in the day it happened. And I remember February 7th because that's the day one of my first trip to Utah this year was on February 7th. And I remember it was the talk of the town. People were excited. I even talked to people who had just been through the temple and they really appreciated the ceremony. They feel like it's an improvement. So it's just really interesting to be able to kind of be able to, not that we've been through the temple or anything or not that we know exactly what the ceremonies are. And of course, all that stuff's out there. But the key thing is just, this is an important place for Latter-day Saints. And this is a sacred space for them. And when, in one of the things that you had talked about in your general conference video, which I thought was so fascinating, was how you contrasted the beauty of the tabernacle choir singing and then juxtapose the images of the evangelical protesters holding their signs. And this is a message to the evangelicals out there that think that they're accomplishing anything by doing these. Now you had said too, David, there were some good people there. They weren't trying to be disruptive. They were trying to be friendly. Well, that's fine. I think it's good to try to have conversations.
They kept a distance from street preachers. So it's like they did not want to have anything to do with that. So there were enough. It's just, you hear the loudness. And I think that's one thing that I took away, especially with these temple visits, is like each temple is supposed to be a light. It's supposed to be this beacon, this house of the Lord. And it's like one thing as a Protestant that is very, different to me is, everyone kind of puts on the white clothing. At first, that was very weird to me to hear. But now I understand, no, it's like, it's this sacred part. It's this essential part of God's plan where it's like, you may have, you might be a multimillionaire, but when you're walking in, you're equal to every single soul that's inside. Like, it's an equality thing. And I think that's something that that I'm understanding much more, gaining more appreciation, because there is one thing that I took away from this with these two visits was Elder Bednar. And Elder Bednar, there's a talk that he gives that stems from an April 2000 talk from President Boyd Packer. So I guess it was from April 2000, and they opened up the conference center. It was this amazing facility. Everyone's talking about just how beautiful this is. But President Packer kind of talked about this parable of a merchant, and he had searched all over the world for one of the finest pearls that you could possibly find. And he found one, but because it was so beautiful, he wanted to put it in a box. He didn't want it to, be ruined or stolen or anything like that. But then so he found the best carpenter that made this amazing treasure box or box in general. And suddenly the people were so amazed by the box, like they didn't appreciate the pearl. And from what I'm learned from these temple visits is, yeah, the box, the temple, it's beautiful, it's amazing, but the spirit of it, beauty of it is inside with Christ. Christ is the pearl. And I think that was one thing that I think not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but any church in general, Catholic, Protestant, whatever, can find appreciation in that, because when you're going to church, when you go into these amazing basilicas or cathedrals or temples or anything, the main focus should be on Jesus Christ.
Yeah, amen to that. And that's the thing, and of course, you and I have had this conversation before, and I've talked about this, is that the privileged position that you and I are both in is that as we engage all the different facets of the restoration, all the different groups, all the different people, all the people who are a product of the Book of Mormon, the product of Joseph Smith, and the product of the restoration, is that we have the unique position, unlike those protesters outside who are holding their signs and not contributing anything to the actual bridge building Prince of Peace process, right, of trying to communicating with each other. You and I got to be exposed and get to see the pearls of the restoration. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Maybe speak to that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's biblical too, because like our tongues can be used as swords. And that's very, very dangerous to do, especially with what you see from those that are very, that street preacher mentality. You're going to hell, you're wrong. And I think especially right now, especially like Christian YouTube in general, like there's a pollution right now. There's a kind of like a witch hunt for prosperity preachers and false prophets and everything like that. And it's getting to be it's getting very dangerous, very toxic. And I hope with my channel, with your channel, with Interfaith Talk, and just trying to understand and do more, be a light for others. And I think that's something that is getting missed. And I just would hate to see more negative influence out there. So hopefully what we're both doing, it's something that is helping other people's lives, and just understand, have that bridge building as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so important in today's society to do this. And this is the problem I have with a lot of these so-called apologists and street preachers. And a lot of them do a lot of street stuff. As a matter of fact, so many of these Christian apologists are doing their debates and stuff like that, but there are also many of these are on the forefront of these protests and holding signs. And I have to tell you, there are a few exceptions, but there's some really good people that work in the Christian apologist world. I'll grant you that. But for the most part, most of these people who attack me, by the way, and slander me and spread lies about me, I look at that and I say, I don't see any fruits. And Jesus said, you'll know them by their fruits. And so I see these pharisaical people who are doing their religious stuff, but I don't see any Jesus there. And I'm very hurt by that, because these people are representing themselves as being evangelicals. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are misrepresenting Mormonism to an evangelical audience. And I think that's sad too. And again, I have disagreements, of course, with Latter-day Saints and their theology. And we've discussed them openly, okay? Do it all the time. I'm not without criticism here and there. And I'm not with critiques. I'll do that. But my goodness, guys, when you're out there doing what you're doing and mocking these people and their faith and their values, I just feel like it's not very Christ-like. It's not very Christian. And it really calls into my mind Why are you even doing this? And to me, they're doing it because they're operating in the flesh. They're operating with the natural man is in control because they're doing it for their own ego. They get a thrill out of yelling and screaming at people, telling them they're going to hell. It's because they're in a place. I'd like to. So many of them are just in they're in a very toxic place, and they really honestly think that by acting like that is Christ-like. And this is the thing, and I'm going to have you comment on this too, is when Dr. Kyle Bashir's wonderful guy, assistant pastor at a megachurch in Mobile, Alabama, a region rat just like me from Northwest Indiana. He had said, so often these Christian apologists and these people holding these signs say, well, Jesus turned over the tables in the temple. Jesus was a fighter. He was whipping those people and those kind of stuff. He said the key thing is that Jesus did not go to Samaria, to their temple, and do it. He did it to his own people's temple. So the question I have for you guys is, why are you going and turning and trying to do this when Jesus did not do this either? He did not turn over the tables in with the Samaritans' temples. He did it in Jerusalem. And so to me, I think we need to do, you and I, if we're going to turn over any tables, it has to be done in our own camp, because I really think that the toxicity and a lot of the negativity that we see spewing from these people is really a problematic thing about modern American evangelicalism. Okay, I'm getting off my soapbox now.
Preach, Steve.
So maybe just speak to that a little bit. Your experience, because this is, again, when you first started your channel, you were a little bit more judgmental, and then you've kind of learned as you've grown, and I think you've spiritually grown, you realize that, no, that's not the way to do it, and just having genuine conversations and stuff with your book, and then later your YouTube channel. Maybe just talk about maybe your spiritual growth and the way how you've changed your approach with groups that are different than you.
I think that's a great point, because when I started 52 churches in 52 weeks, especially with the book, I came from a very much more judgmental approach. Especially in the book, like my very first Catholic visit, I was extremely judgmental about that whole visit. And over time, as I've seen more churches, it becomes, for me now, I've documented over 100 different church visits. And to see all the differences out there, it doesn't make me feel like I know more. It makes me feel like I know less. It's a much more humble approach, and the only thread that I can really connect with everything is Christ and us and that relationship. So there can be differences in theology, obviously, and the different doctrines and interpretations. But the more people that I talk to, the more eyeballs that I see, the more humble that I get, and the more that I hope that I'm displaying love. And that has been a process. That has not been something that came overnight. And I've mentioned this in other videos where I feel like with my visits to not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but also Community of Christ, the Church of Jesus Christ with the Bickertonite group, with the Strangite Church. Those were some of the best fruits that I've seen from any other church. And as a result, it's forced me to really ponder about, okay, what is this Book of Mormon? Especially when we did the Book of Mormon rally with Patrick McKay, you just the testimonies. When we were sitting in his home, and you mentioned to me, hey, David, we probably need to take off. It's like I didn't want to leave because I'm hearing all these testimonies, and it wasn't necessarily about the theology. It was about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I hope, especially with all these church visits, I've had a lot of people, if I had some critics where it's like, oh, get your head in the Bible, you don't need to be visiting all these different churches. But at the same point, it's like, look at all this community, look at all, and on top of that, especially with, I did a recent visit to the 10th Ward Chapel, just blocks away from Temple Square.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first real Utah church visit.
Okay.
To be a part of the history in there. I was reading President Gordon Hinckley, who actually attended that church when he turned 12 years old. and I guess he had just become a deacon. And to read his testimony when he first visited, and just all these strong men singing hymns to Jesus Christ, like you don't really see that so much in today's day and age. And I feel like we need to understand a little bit more church history to know where we came from.
That's true, and I think that was a fascinating episode. So yeah, so your most recent episode, dealing with Latter-day Saints, has to do with your visit to the Pioneer 10th Ward Chapel, and that's a great episode. I recommend that. And folks, now what we're going to do is David is going to talk about his experience visiting the Orem Temple, but we're going to before I let you go, because what we're going to do, folks, we're going to have bonus coverage that you can only get at the Utah Interfaith Forum, and this will be bonus to preview his next episode, which this episode will come out a couple days before. So most likely releasing this on Friday, December 8th, and then probably Sunday, December 10th. I suspect that will be when you'll be releasing the Orem Temple visit. Is that correct?
That's what I'm shooting for right now. Yep.
Okay. So hold on real quick. Let's just go back. So you got to go to the Utah Interfaith Forum YouTube channel and make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have all your notifications on. And so this episode is being released on both NBR and UIF, but this bonus coverage is only going to be seen on UIF. And I want to get people to subscribe to that channel, because I do feel like that it can be an important work. I feel like what we are doing with your channel, your book, your journey, and similarly with me, is that we are doing interfaith in action, which is one of the terms I like to use. Interfaith in action. We don't just talk about it. We get our hands dirty and we do it. Mr. David Boice, thank you for coming on, and don't forget, switch over to the Utah Interfaith Forum, and we're going to have some bonus coverage. David, thanks for coming back on the program today.
Appreciate it, Steve. And yeah, I'm going to make one more visit out to Utah. I don't know where I'm going to be visiting for Sunday morning. So if you have any suggestions, recommendations, make sure to leave those in the comments. I can only pick one for Sunday morning, but I would love to hear some ideas.
That's great. Okay, so folks, leave comments. Tell us what you think about the conversation. I always have a blast with David whenever he comes on. It's always a great privilege to have somebody of David's stature, who, when he first came on my program, I was bigger than, and now he's bigger than me, which is fine. Just as it is with Jeff McCullough. He was smaller than me, and now he's bigger than me. And then we have our homeboys over at the Stick of Joseph, who are really doing great work. I'm really privileged to many of you. The first time you've ever met these people was through Mormon Book Reviews, which, speaking of which, if you want to, we do have a merch store, mormonbookreviews.com, where you can get hot chocolate mugs, hats, and all sorts of things. Also, you can, if you want to financially support the channel, we have links for Venmo, PayPal, as well as Patreon. And I want to thank everybody who is financially supporting the channel. And don't forget, go to UIF for bonus coverage. But remember, the most important thing is this, folks. Remember, all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.